stop. Most men hug completely wrong, and they don't even realize it. You've done it before. She leans in. You hug back, maybe pat her shoulder, maybe squeeze a little, and then nothing. She smiles politely, pulls away, and the moment is gone. You think it's over. But here's the brutal truth. That hug is your first, and sometimes only chance to embed yourself in her mind forever. Most men fail because they treat a hug like a simple gesture, a routine goodbye. They overthink words, they rush, they fumble, or worse, they act desperate without even knowing it. What she actually remembers isn't what you said. It's the energy you brought. The way you carried yourself, the silent, almost invisible signals your body gave her. Now imagine this, a hug so subtle, so precise, that she can't stop thinking about you. Every detail matters, the timing, the grounding of your shoulders, the pause, the micro-expression in your eyes, the calm presence you radiate. One wrong move and it's forgettable. One perfect alignment of energy and it's unforgettable. It's not about force. It's not about charm. It's about control, presence, and a tiny, almost imperceptible art of attraction. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal the Stoic secrets that turn an ordinary hug into a moment she can't erase from her memory. I'll show you exactly how to prepare, respond, and leave her mind stuck on you for days, weeks, even months. No tricks, no cheesy lines, just pure psychological mastery. Watch closely because after this, every hug you give will never be ordinary again. You're about to learn how to make her remember you forever. And once you do, she'll think about you long after you're gone. Chapter 1. The First Realization. I remember the first time I really noticed it. And I'll be honest, it hit me like a punch to the gut. I was at a small cafe in London, just after finishing a long afternoon of work at a startup. I had met this girl, Emily, through mutual friends. Nothing serious, just a casual connection. But there was this spark between us that made me feel like something was about to change. We'd spent hours chatting, laughing at silly stories about our university days, sharing opinions about travel, London pubs, and even the best coffee spots in Shoreditch. The evening was winding down, and as we walked outside, I felt her lean in for a hug. My heart raced. That moment, the split second before contact, is when everything matters. I went in like I always had before, awkward, stiff, patting her back like a nervous rookie. I avoided eye contact, kept my smile small and forced, and honestly, I think I even looked a little desperate without realizing it. She pulled away politely, smiled, and that was it. No lingering warmth, no subtle spark, nothing that suggested anything meaningful had happened. Later that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept replaying the hug in my head, analyzing every little movement, every micro-expression. It was then I realized something profound. A hug isn't just a hug. It's a test, almost a silent conversation. She wasn't just saying goodbye, she was feeling me out, seeing if I had the presence, the confidence, and the subtle energy that sticks in a woman's mind. And in that moment I had failed, not because I wasn't attracted to her, but because I didn't know how to respond in a way that mattered. This was my wake-up call. I began noticing patterns. Every hug I gave that left an impression had one thing in common. I wasn't thinking about what I looked like, what I said, or even how she perceived me. I was simply present. It was a light bulb moment, a turning point in understanding human connection, particularly with women from my own culture and those I met across the UK. That hug, Emily's polite smile, it haunted me not because I was rejected, but because I knew I had missed an opportunity to make a lasting impression. I began a journey to master what I now call the Stoic hug. A hug that communicates confidence, presence, and subtle intrigue all at once. I experimented in cafes in Manchester, on the streets of Edinburgh, and even during casual meetups in Brighton. The more I practiced, the more I realized that a hug can leave a woman thinking about you for days, weeks, or even months, but only if it's executed with a calm, confident, and emotionally controlled approach. That first awkward hug was the catalyst that changed how I approached every interaction afterward, and it was the moment I committed to learning this almost invisible art. Chapter 2. Understanding the power of a hug. Most guys I know think a hug is just a physical gesture, a polite exchange of warmth, or a quick goodbye. But I learned slowly and sometimes painfully that it's so much more. A hug is a silent language, a subtle dialogue that communicates far more than words ever could. It's a mix of energy, presence, and intention, and women pick up on it instantly. I remember one encounter in Oxford, at a small art gallery opening. I was talking to a woman named Sophie. We'd spent the evening joking about ridiculous abstract paintings, sharing small personal stories, and laughing over cups of wine. At the end of the night, she leaned in for a hug. I went in stiffly, my mind racing about whether I should squeeze, pat, or simply step back. She sensed my hesitation immediately. Her energy shifted. It wasn't disappointed, but it was subtly disengaged. That hug became a non-event, completely forgettable. Contrast that with another time in Cambridge. I was meeting a girl, Lucy, for coffee at a quaint little cafe near King's Parade. She leaned in for a hug, and this time I did something different. I stopped thinking. I relaxed my shoulders, grounded myself, and mirrored her slight forward movement. The hug was firm but comfortable, a beat longer than casual, and I held subtle eye contact as we separated. I could feel her linger slightly, and later, she brought it up in a text. That hug felt different. I can't stop thinking about it. It's that difference, the invisible energy, the unspoken connection, that makes a hug powerful. Women don't just remember the gesture, they remember how it made them feel. That's the real secret, and it's something most men overlook completely. The hug isn't just physical contact. It's a magnet, a way to subtly embed yourself into her memory. I began studying the psychology behind it, how physical touch releases oxytocin, how micro-expressions communicate confidence or insecurity, and how slight pauses, grounding, and controlled breathing can make a hug feel emotionally charged without words. Every hug is an opportunity, and the stakes are high, especially with women in cultures where subtlety, body language, and social intuition are crucial, like in England or across European cities I traveled to. Chapter 3. Preparing before the hug. Here's where most guys fail before they even start. Preparation isn't just mental, it's physical, emotional, and almost strategic. I started paying attention to the little things, how I approached her, the tone of my voice, my body language, even the pace of my steps. All of these elements send signals, consciously or unconsciously. One evening in Soho, London, I was meeting a girl named Chloe for drinks. I knew a hug was coming at the end of the night, it always does. But instead of ignoring it, I prepared. I slowed my breathing, focused on staying grounded, and kept my attention fully on her, not on what I would say or how I might look. When she leaned in, I was ready. Not with rehearsed lines, not with a forced charm, but with calm presence. I also began reading subtle cues in women, the lean, the tilt of the head a slight step closer, or the tension in their shoulders. These micro moments told me if she was seeking comfort, connection, or just a polite hug. Learning to read these cues made a massive difference. For example, I remember noticing Emily's slight hesitation at a street market in Liverpool. I mirrored her hesitation slightly, creating a small rhythm, and it made the hug feel natural, playful, and deeply engaging. Preparation also includes mindset. I adopted a Stoic approach: control my energy, detach from outcomes, and focus entirely on being present. I no longer approached hugs thinking about winning her attention or approval. Instead, I reminded myself, I control my reaction, not hers. I offer presence, not desperation. That shift alone transformed every interaction. Chapter 4. The hug itself. Now comes the moment that matters, the hug itself. This is where timing, energy, and intention converge. Most guys mess this up because they either overthink it or rush it. I learned to respond like a conductor leading an orchestra. Every second, every touch, every release matters. One night in Cambridge, Lucy leaned in. Instead of rushing, I slowed my movement just slightly, allowing a natural anticipation to build. I held her just long enough to communicate presence without making it awkward, grounded my shoulders, and subtly mirrored her energy. The moment felt effortless but charged. Later, she admitted she kept thinking about that hug, how it felt calm, confident, and unexpectedly intimate. The key is balance, not too short, not too long, not too stiff, not too loose. Firm enough to communicate confidence, relaxed enough to show comfort. This is the dance of the hug. I realize that women are incredibly sensitive to these micro signals. A perfect hug conveys subtle intrigue and emotional resonance without a single word. I also began using micro cues, a small smile, a gentle exhale, or even a tiny pause before stepping back. These little things signal that you are confident, self-possessed, and fully present. Over time, I noticed a pattern. Women remembered hugs where these subtle elements existed, often referencing them days or weeks later. It became clear. The hug isn't over when you step. It's over when the memory fades. Chapter 5. Words versus energy. I learned a truth that completely shifted the way I connect with women. Words are secondary. Energy, how you carry yourself during the hug, is what truly leaves a lasting impression. Early on, I thought I needed clever lines, compliments, or even flirty remarks to make a hug memorable. I was wrong. I discovered this the hard way during a night out in Manchester. At a rooftop bar overlooking the city lights, I had been talking to a girl named Sophie. We laughed over stories about our university days in London, shared opinions about travel pubs, and our favorite local bands. When it was time to leave, she leaned in for a hug. I tried my usual smooth lines. That was fun. "Can't wait to see you again." But I noticed her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She stepped back politely, and the energy of the hug vanished the second we separated. It hit me. Words alone were useless. A hug is more like a silent conversation, where the way you carry your body, the subtle warmth in your shoulders, and the timing of your movements speak louder than anything you could say. I started experimenting with energy instead of words. In Cambridge, when meeting Lucy again, I leaned in for a hug with no rehearsed line, no forced compliment. I relaxed my shoulders, grounded my chest, exhaled calmly, and mirrored her movement. The hug lasted a beat longer, just enough to convey presence without needing to say a word. Later, she sent me a text. "I can't stop thinking about that hug," and I didn't even say anything particularly clever. That was the turning point. I realized energy, not words, is the currency of lasting impression. I also noticed that women, particularly in English social settings, are extremely sensitive to confidence and presence. Whether you're hugging someone at a music festival in Brighton or outside a coffee shop in London, how you feel in the moment transfers to her. It's like a ripple effect. Calm, grounded energy makes her feel safe, intrigued, and connected, whereas nervous energy signals uncertainty. So the lesson is clear. Master your energy first. Words are icing on the cake, not the foundation. If your energy is confident and present, even the simplest "take care" whispered during a hug can leave a lasting imprint. Over time, I developed a subtle mental checklist before every hug. Relax my body, ground my presence, mirror her energy slightly. Let anticipation build for a split second. Focus on emotional connection, not verbal interaction. Once I adopted this approach, I noticed an almost magical transformation. Hugs became remembered moments, and conversations afterward were enriched not by what I said, but by the connection established through energy. Women, especially in England, often commented later about how different the experience felt, how calm, safe, and unforgettable it was. The key takeaway: don't overthink words during a hug. Channel your energy, your presence, and your emotional control. That is what she will remember. Your words are optional. Your energy is essential. Chapter 6. The Stoic Mindset Behind the Hug. I started to realize that what separates unforgettable hugs from forgettable ones isn't just technique. It's mindset. Specifically, a Stoic mindset. At first, this sounded almost too philosophical. How could Stoicism, a philosophy I studied in university lectures and Stoic texts, help me with something as simple as a hug? But the more I practiced, the more the connection became clear. Stoicism teaches detachment, self-possession, and emotional control. I began applying these principles directly to interactions with women. Before a hug, I reminded myself, I control my reaction, not hers. I offer presence, not neediness. Suddenly, hugs weren't moments of anxiety or performance. They were opportunities to demonstrate calm, grounded confidence. I remember one chilly evening in Edinburgh, walking a girl named Isla back from a small jazz club. She leaned in for a hug, and I felt that familiar tension in my chest. In the past, I might have stiffened, worried about what she would think, or overcompensated with a quick squeeze. That night, I used Stoicism. I focused on my breathing, relaxed my shoulders, and anchored myself in the present. The hug lasted a beat longer than usual, but it felt effortless. Isla smiled softly and lingered, and I could sense the impression had been made. What I noticed over time is that women, consciously or not, can detect emotional independence. The men who overreact, fumble, or chase validation create a fleeting memory. The men who remain calm, grounded, and self-possessed create a lasting memory. Stoicism gave me the internal framework to stay emotionally neutral yet engaging, a balance that makes hugs unforgettable. I also began observing cultural nuances. In England, women value subtlety and emotional intelligence. A hug that's too forceful or overeager feels desperate. A hug that's calm, confident, and slightly playful feels magnetic. Stoicism allowed me to align with these expectations naturally. Ultimately, the Stoic mindset isn't about being cold or distant, it's about self-possession. When you hug with this mindset, you exude calm confidence and subtle intrigue. And the incredible thing, women notice it even if they can't articulate why. They remember the feeling, and that feeling is the core of staying on her mind forever. Chapter 7. Building a memory that lasts. A hug is powerful, but if you want to remain in her thoughts long after the moment, you need to attach it to an emotional anchor. I learned this in Brighton, at a small bookshop cafe. I was hugging a girl named Olivia after a discussion about travel in Europe. Instead of a standard hug, I added a subtle personal touch. A playful whisper. "You smell like an adventure waiting to happen." It was unexpected, slightly flirty, and perfectly natural. She laughed softly, paused, and stepped back. Days later, she referenced that line, not because of the words themselves, but because they linked the hug to a unique emotional experience. Women's minds work in subtle ways. They associate experiences, smells, small phrases, and energy with people. That's why micro-moments matter. A hug isn't just physical contact, it's a chance to create an anchor in her memory. When done correctly, it can make her think of you hours, even days later. I experimented further, adding light teasing, playful energy, or even gentle humor to make each hug stand out. The key is subtlety, never forced or over the top. For instance, in London, after a long evening walking along the South Bank, I whispered to a girl named Hannah during a hug, "Careful, you might make me think you're irresistible." Small, playful, anchored to the moment. She smiled, and that hug lingered in her mind, referenced later in texts and conversation. Creating a memory isn't about grand gestures, it's about linking emotional energy to presence. Women, particularly in English-speaking contexts, remember how they felt more than anything else, and a well-executed hug, paired with the right emotional anchor, can make that feeling unforgettable. Chapter 8. Timing matters. Timing, I discovered, is everything. A hug given too soon, too late, or at the wrong energy level, can completely neutralize its impact. I learned this during a weekend in Oxford where I met a girl named Charlotte. We'd spent hours exploring the city, sharing anecdotes about our university days and favorite pubs. At the end, she stepped in for a hug. Instead of rushing, I mirrored her slight lean, held just a beat longer than casual, and subtly let her energy guide the moment. It was effortless. Later, she texted me referencing that hug, saying how it felt different yet natural. I realized the best hugs aren't forced. They're timed to moments of emotional significance. The ideal moments are often predictable but subtle, leaving a date, reuniting after a small separation, or moments where she is seeking comfort or reassurance. The hug should never feel transactional. It should feel natural, slightly anticipated, and emotionally resonant. I also learned that mirroring her energy is crucial. If she's enthusiastic, match it. If she's subtle, keep it light and playful. Timing and energy together create a rhythm, a dance, of connection that sticks in her memory. Across London, Cambridge, and Edinburgh, I noticed the same pattern. Hugs executed with precise timing were the ones that women remembered, texted about, and even referenced weeks later. Chapter 9. Mastering subtle touch after the hug. One of the most overlooked aspects of a memorable hug is what happens after it ends. I used to think the moment was over the second I stepped back, but I quickly learned that those microseconds after separation are critical. Women notice everything: the subtle energy, the lingering touch, the eye contact. A hug doesn't just end. It transitions into memory. I remember a night in Soho, London, walking back from a jazz bar with a girl named Mia. The hug came naturally as we paused outside her flat. Instead of the usual awkward pat on the back, I subtly let my hand rest lightly on her shoulder for a split second, held soft eye contact, and then stepped back slowly. She smiled in a way that lingered in my mind as much as the hug itself. That simple adjustment changed the entire dynamic. Micro moments like this are where subtlety and confidence shine. A slight pause, a gentle hand on her upper back, or maintaining eye contact, just a heartbeat, longer communicates presence and emotional security. Without a word, women, particularly in England, are very perceptive to these cues. They sense whether a man is fully present or distracted, playful micro cues. For instance, during a hug on a rainy evening in Cambridge with a girl named Lucy, I lightly whispered, "Careful, you might make me melt," just as we separated. It was unexpected, playful, and perfectly timed. She laughed softly, and I could tell the moment had left a subtle imprint on her memory. Over time, I realized that the hug isn't the only thing that sticks in her mind the way you separate. The energy you carry immediately afterward, and the subtle signals you give her all matter. These micro moments enhance the impact, making you unforgettable without being overt. In practical terms, mastering subtle touch is about maintaining presence. Don't rush away. Hold a calm energy. Subtle physical cues. A light touch on the back or shoulder can make a difference. Eye contact. Just a heartbeat longer can communicate emotional depth. Playful energy. A soft whisper or slight tease can anchor the memory. The takeaway? Don't underestimate the moments after the hug. These subtle cues, when combined with the hug itself, create a lasting impression that keeps you on her mind long after the encounter. Chapter 10. Stoic Detachment and Impact. I discovered another crucial piece to unforgettable hugs: stoic detachment. It may sound counterintuitive. How can detachment make a woman remember you? But it works because women sense emotional stability. A man who is emotionally unshakable communicates confidence, security, and presence, all qualities that linger in memory. One evening in Edinburgh, I met a girl named Isla. After a night exploring local pubs, we hugged outside her flat. I didn't cling, I didn't overthink, and I certainly didn't try to impress her. I simply stayed grounded, held the hug naturally, and let it flow. Later, Isla told me she had kept thinking about that hug for days. The difference wasn't the technique, it was my emotional composure. Detachment isn't about being cold. It's about self-possession. It's about offering presence without needing validation or approval. Women, especially in English cultural contexts, are subconsciously drawn to men who are calm and confident. They sense when someone is emotionally dependent versus self-contained. I also realized that stoic detachment enhances impact. When a hug is given without expectation, without desperation, it feels natural and magnetic. It communicates, "I am confident, grounded, and present." And that is precisely what makes a hug unforgettable. I began practicing detachment mentally before every social interaction. I reminded myself, the moment is for presence, not performance. I control my energy, not hers. This mindset transformed my interactions completely. Suddenly, even casual hugs became charged with subtle intrigue and emotional resonance. The combination of stoic detachment and subtle energy is powerful. Women remember how they felt, not your words or gestures. Detachment allows your energy to communicate confidence and emotional intelligence, leaving a lasting imprint that keeps you on her mind. Chapter 11. Repetition and Consistency. I quickly learned that one unforgettable hug is powerful, but repetition builds a pattern that solidifies your presence in her mind. The first hug creates intrigue. Subsequent hugs reinforce connection, trust, and emotional resonance. I experienced this in London while seeing a girl named Hannah over several weeks. Each time we met, I applied the same principles: grounded presence, subtle energy, emotional anchoring, and stoic detachment. Each hug was slightly different, sometimes playful, sometimes calm, but always deliberate. Over time, Hannah began anticipating the hug, almost subconsciously associating me with warmth, security, and intrigue. Consistency matters more than novelty. A series of thoughtful, well-executed hugs creates a reliable, emotional pattern that women notice and remember. The brain naturally associates repeated experiences with emotional safety and attraction. In my own experience, I noticed that girls I interacted with consistently remembered the sequence of hugs, far more than any single moment alone. For instance, after a weekend trip in Brighton, a girl named Olivia texted me days later, saying, "Every time we hug, I feel something different, but I can't stop thinking about it." That's the power of repetition combined with subtle variation. Each hug reinforces presence while maintaining intrigue. Repetition doesn't mean mechanical or forced hugs. It's about consistent emotional delivery. Each encounter reinforces your magnetic energy and makes you unforgettable. Over time, she begins to think about you automatically when she recalls your interactions. Chapter 12. Real-life examples that work. Let me share some of the most effective real-life examples that illustrate these principles in action. These are moments that left lasting impressions on English women I've met in London, Cambridge, Edinburgh, and Brighton. 1. The subtle compliment. After a walk along the South Bank in London, I whispered during a hug, "You smell like a story waiting to happen." It was playful, personal, and memorable. She referenced it later in a text. Light teasing. On a rainy evening in Cambridge, I whispered to Lucy during a hug, "Careful, you might make me think you're irresistible." She laughed and the hug lingered in her mind. For his grounded presence in Edinburgh, after walking through local pubs, I hugged Isla calmly without expectation, maintaining subtle eye contact. She admitted she kept thinking about the hug days later. Playful micro moments. On a night in Brighton, after a small bookstore date, I paused slightly during the hug and let my hand rest briefly on the upper back. That tiny moment anchored the memory, and she later referenced it in conversation. Each of these examples demonstrates that it's not force, words, or grand gestures that matter. It's subtlety, timing, grounded presence, and emotional intelligence. Done correctly, a hug becomes a lasting imprint in her memory. Chapter 13, Common Mistakes to Avoid. I've learned the hard way that even if you know all the techniques, one misstep can completely ruin a memorable hug. Over time, I noticed a few consistent mistakes that most men make, and understanding them is crucial if you want to stay on her mind. The first mistake is rushing the hug. I used to think a quick pat on the back or a fast squeeze was polite and efficient, but in reality, a rushed hug signals impatience and lack of presence. Women notice this immediately. I remember meeting a girl named Emma in Manchester for a casual pub night. She leaned in for a hug and I rushed through it thinking it was enough. She pulled away politely, smiled, but her energy was neutral. That hug left no impression and I knew it the moment I walked away. The second mistake is overthinking the hug. I've seen guys tense up, worrying about exactly how long to hold her or how firmly to squeeze. That stiffness kills natural presence instantly. Confidence isn't calculated, it's felt. The trick is to relax, breathe, and let the hug flow naturally. During a meetup in London with Sophie, I noticed a guy overthinking every hug she gave him, fidgeting, checking his watch, and constantly adjusting his posture. She seemed polite, but she didn't linger mentally after their hugs. Contrast that with my approach. I mirrored her energy, stayed grounded, and held subtle eye contact. The difference was undeniable. The third mistake is needy commentary. Comments like, "I missed you," or "I'm so glad I hugged you," in a needy tone cheapen the moment. Women subconsciously sense desperation. Instead, let your presence and subtle energy communicate interest. For instance, in Brighton, after a hug with Olivia, I didn't over-explain or add commentary. I simply smiled, nodded, and stepped back. Later, she mentioned that the hug lingered in her mind. The energy, not the words, made it unforgettable. Finally, the fourth mistake is ignoring energy cues. Women constantly send micro-signals about how they want to be hugged. Are they leaning in? Are their shoulders tense or relaxed? Ignoring these cues makes the hug feel robotic or forgettable. I learned to notice these details in real time. In Cambridge, when hugging Lucy, I subtly mirrored her movements and energy. That slight adjustment made the hug feel natural and memorable. Avoid these pitfalls, and you'll see a massive difference in how women respond and remember you. The key takeaway is simple. Be present, be relaxed, and read her subtle cues. The hug is a conversation, and missing these signals can turn a potential, lasting memory into a forgettable moment. Chapter 14, The Stoic Hug in Practice. After years of trial and error, I distilled everything I'd learned into what I now call the Stoic hug, a deliberate, confident, and emotionally intelligent way to hug that leaves a lasting impression. This isn't just theory. It's a practical formula I've used across cities like London, Cambridge, Edinburgh, and Brighton with incredible results. Here's the formula I follow. I approach confidently. I make eye contact. Relax my shoulders and carry a calm energy. This communicates presence before contact even begins. I learned this walking through London's Covent Garden. Seeing girls notice subtle energy cues before the hug even happened. 2. Mirror subtly. I match her lean, her step, her energy. One evening in Cambridge, Lucy leaned slightly forward as she approached for a hug. I mirrored her motion just a little, which created a natural rhythm that made the hug feel effortless. For engaged presence, shoulders relaxed, chest grounded, subtle breathing control. It's all about presence, not force. In Brighton, during a bookstore date with Olivia, I stayed fully in the moment, letting presence carry the hug rather than words or gestures. 4. Anchor the moment. Add subtle, playful energy. A micro compliment or even a soft whisper. This creates a lasting emotional imprint. On a rainy night in London, I whispered to a girl, "Careful, you might make me think you're irresistible." It made the hug memorable, and she referenced it later in a text. 5. Separate gracefully. Hold eye contact just a heartbeat longer. Step back slowly, maintain calm energy. This communicates confidence without neediness. A casual, graceful separation reinforces the memory. Detach from outcome. This is the Stoic core. Your goal is presence, not validation. Women sense desperation instantly. In Edinburgh, after hugging Isla, I walked away calmly without looking for approval. Later, she admitted she kept thinking about the hug. The Stoic hug is about subtlety, timing, and emotional intelligence. It's not about flashy gestures or rehearsed lines. When executed correctly, it becomes a small but powerful emotional anchor in a woman's mind. Over time, I noticed a pattern. Repeated, mindful hugs create anticipation and connection, leaving her thinking about you long after the moment passes. Chapter 15. Closing story and reflection. I want to end with one story that ties everything together. A few months ago, I met a girl named Hannah in London. We had been casually seeing each other, sharing long walks along the Thames, late-night talks at small cafes, and plenty of laughter. One chilly evening, after a night exploring the South Bank, we paused outside her flat. She leaned in for a hug. I followed everything I had learned: grounded presence, subtle mirroring, playful energy, soft whisper, and a calm, stoic detachment. I held her just a heartbeat longer than normal, smiled gently, and stepped back slowly. That moment, I realized, was not just a hug, it was an imprint. The next day, Hannah texted me, "I keep thinking about that hug last night. You're different." That one line encapsulated everything I had learned over years of trial, error, and observation. It's not about words, looks, or grand gestures. It's about energy, presence, timing, and subtle emotional anchoring. A hug done with confidence, awareness, and stoic detachment leaves a lasting mark. And that's the core message I want you to take away. Every hug is an opportunity to create a memory that lingers. When you master subtle cues, emotional presence, and mindful timing, you leave a woman thinking about you long after the moment has passed. Hugs are powerful. They are not just gestures. They are silent emotional conversations. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.